The 1850 Oliver project. And it's turned into a project, that's for sure. But now I need to remove the old steering motor or steering gear, whatever they call these things, which are problematic, because this one has the problem. It'll turn to the right, the wheels will go whoop, easy, but they will not come back. And I went for a drive in it. I was going down the road, had her up in 6th gear, and that is dangerous because the wheels want to drift to the right and then just constantly turning left, turning left, turning left to keep it straight. I do have some new parts to fix it. I'll show those here in a bit. But the first thing I need to do is get all this stuff out here. I already removed this panel. I'll get that out of there, unhook a bunch of wires. Plus this isn't original, I kind of changed it. I need to get this out of here. This panel here is the most important piece I need to get out. Then we can remove all this stuff. Managed to get this panel moved. It's sat up on top, just laid it forward here. It shouldn't bother anything. And this panel here, I had a few wires unhooked. Got those unhooked, along with the oil pressure line. The speedometer cable. I never hooked it back up because the gauge is junk. And the RPM and hour meter, the cable's junk that runs to it, so more parts I need to hunt. But I need to get this off, and if I remember, I think I might have put some silicone under that. I hold it on, but I'm going to figure out how to get that off. Once I get that off, there's a nut behind there. Take that off, I can pull all this out, and then pull that piece up and out. Managed to get that little Oliver Power Sting emblem out of there. There was a little bit of silicone down in one spot, but here's the nut you take off. There's my parts bin, and that will pull off, and then this should all pull right out of there, if I remember right. Yep, came right out. Now we have no steering wheel. We do have a steering wheel, but it's over here. I should be able to pull all this right out of here. Now we can access all this stuff, the tilt. Let them do these pins down in here. I don't know if you can see them or not. Of course, the sun wants to shine right now. There's like some pins that go in and hit down in there where it pivots on. You only need to take that off too. There's like a bolt that runs across there. Take all these lines loose and get that mess out of there, and then get the new mess in. So hopefully it will work better than this thing. Yeah, I slid this piece up and out of there after I took those little nuts loose there. All the lines unhooked. And they're pretty simple. That's the return, which is this hose here. That's the pressure. And this is left, I assume, and this is right. Not 100% sure on that, but this is on the right side of the tractor, and that's on the left side of the tractor. Which would make sense to me, but who knows how they actually did it from the factory. So that's probably how I'll hook the new one up. I still need to go down below and take the lines off all down there, but I'm not doing that yet. Being as they point straight up, if it decides to rain, it might get water down in it. So this is all loose. Not really loose, but everything it bolts to it's removed. Just need to back these pins out. We should be able to pull that up and out. Don't know if it'll slip through there, but if not, we might be able to take her up that way. Managed to get those, well, there's two of them, these big ass nuts down in there. Loose, I can screw that pin out, which holds that in there, and it's loose now. Just need to see if I can get this up and out. I did try to pull it up, and it won't fit between there, so I think we're going to have to go this way. But I don't think it's going to come out of this tube on here, so I'm probably going to have to remove that. And hopefully I can just bring it up this way. I was wrong, I did get it to come out of there, but I kind of finagled it around and bend it down. We'll point this down this way. Spin it around and around a couple times, and it finally came out. And it started to make an oil mess. But I have a bracket that goes down in there. I got online from Maybach tractor. Hope I'm saying that right. But most of this, what I'm doing, I watched the Oliver guy, Chris Lucy, do this to a 1650, which is similar to an 1850, but it's not the same. But I have an orbital motor and the little stub shaft that goes on there. So I need to go get that bracket and stick down in here. And he did his, he kind of had to bend it down in there to get the 3-position tilt to work correctly. So I'm going to get this thing out of here and go grab that bracket. Installed the bracket down in there where it's supposed to go. I think I'm going to have to adjust the pin down here. This pin down here. It's kind of loose, like it needs to come up. You can adjust that up and down. That's all the way up. I set the gauge piece back in there. It almost looks like to me that that could go up some more. And then when it's down on the bottom pin, it's might be a little too low. So need to go grab the orbital motor and a little steering stub and stick in there and see what I think of it, I guess. Seems to fit down in there alright, but I don't know if this arm here is in the correct position. Might need a little tweaking. Down that bracket where it wasn't clocking right with the all the way forward and all the way back, I had to cut it, move it and weld it so it works correctly. When you get the piece on here, you move that, it's actually clocked right. There's the orbital valve, and there's some of the parts. I'm tearing it apart. I was out here and an ambulance went by 3 or 4 times, and there were fighter jets flying over, and I thought I filmed all that, but apparently the camera screwed up and I get none of it, and that's just normal for me. Anyways, need to work on the stub shaft and this piece, which goes up underneath here. I don't know if you could mount it on top, but I've been sticking it underneath, under there. I had to cut that and get this out because this is the wrong splines. This is some kind of Toyota, they call it Toyota spline, and I could not find anything, a coupler to fit on that. So we're going to stick it in the lathe and turn this down. I do have a piece that is the right spline. It's a GM spline coupler that will fit it, and it's hollow, so we're going to have to turn this down and slide the piece on it. It is the correct splines welded on. We should be good to go. Put that back in there. Where'd the top piece go? Anyways, it's around here somewhere, but I'm about done for the day. Like I said, I did film a bunch of other stuff showing me doing all this, and the camera didn't work, so that would be normal. Anyways, pick up my junk, but don't knock it on the ground. We'll get a better look at the tractor from here. I did do this earlier, and it didn't come out right either. I don't know how all these other people do videos and everything just seems to work perfect for them. I never have that work. Anything work out right for me, barely. Especially when I'm filming something. Well, I'll get on this tomorrow and maybe the camera will work like it should. So here's that shaft I was talking about. It's hollow. What the plan is to chuck this up in the lathe and turn that down to that side so we can slide that on there. And this is a 36 spline coupler, GM. It's, what is it, 3/4 36, I think. Anyways, that's the right size for that. It's right down on it. Plan is to get that on there, And then weld this to this other shaft. We'll have telescoping, I guess this piece up here. Yep. We'll have to put that on there. We need to measure all this stuff and get the height right. This isn't sticking up too close to you or too far away from you, but like I said, it telescopes, so it shouldn't be such a big deal. That's up there, put this stuff back. Resume this project tomorrow. Next day, and last night we checked the shaft up, turned it down, so this other hollow shaft that has the right splines for my coupler will fit on there. I'm going to have to weld that on, but I need to cut this and turn it around. Basically, I'll be using this end on here. I haven't gotten that far yet. But I bought it. When I bought this stuff, I bought a kit, not including that. That was separate. This is this actual stub steering shaft that went on there. And like I said, this is had a Toyota spline on it, which I couldn't find anything to fit it. They actually make one that has this 3/4 36 spline, and the place that provided it was out of them at the time. It was not the place I bought this orbital valve from, but I bought a whole kit. Came with this, the steering shaft, and there was also a mounting plate. Kind of had a fan out like this. I cut that off, and I'm going to use this as a spacer behind there. It'll give me a little more room back in there for the lines coming out of there. I need to bolt all this back up in there. See what my height's going to come out like when I do this. That's probably the next thing I'm going to do. Managed to get the orbital valve bolted up there. Get that little spacer piece in there. I showed this before. I was filming, I had this in here, and I was showing how before I cut that bracket that it wouldn't, when you went down, it went down too far. That's the low point, that's the center, that's the high. Now that's not in there perfectly where it's supposed to be. I'll have to do some final adjustments when I get all this finished. But at least it's working now. And I think, when I was filming yesterday, it's a little warm out here in sunshine, and I just laid the camera up here on the fender. I think the camera got too hot. It showed it was filming, but it wasn't doing anything. So I'm going to have to do something different about where I put the camera at. One thing, reason why I stuck that spacer plate in there on top of the orbital valve. The camera's acting funny now too. Is to space that down a little bit to get these lines away from the throttle rod. So when the comm's tilted all the way down, it doesn't interfere with that rod, and it looks like it gave me some more clearance. It looks better than it did before. Actually, it's not down where it's supposed to be. That's where it's supposed to be, but it's getting closer. That just fits down in there. I need a little more tweaking and adjustment. Like I say, it's not the final spot it's going to be in. I need to work on that. Be able to steer to. That goes down there. Like I said, we're going to weld that on there, but not that high. More flush with that. And also that plate down in there should move it down a little bit, because I think this is a little high. I don't have the other piece there. I need to weld back on. But that'll go on there. And we'll make that fit on there. bit more down here. I'll show it when I get there, but I got some measuring and figuring to do here. Got that shaft cut. There's a little stub piece we need off of it. I figured since this was the same on both ends, if I screwed up, I still had another piece, but I think it's coming out just about perfect. Slide that little baby on there. I'll have to weld it around here. I thought maybe I'd weld it on the end there. Haven't decided yet, but at least this will go down on there now. So we're in business. As you get that welded on there, kind of welded it on the end and around the bottom there where it met up. I need to let it cool down, kind of clean it up. Did kind of get onto the splines there a little bit, but I think I can get it to work. Okay, so here's my shaft, my steering shaft. Get that welded on there. Had to kind of grind it there. I welded it to get the collar to slip on, and I made a flat spot in there so you can tighten the little set screw down. But that should work. Here's the collar. Find the flat spot there. And that little hole. Might be a tooth off. There we go. We should be able to tighten that set screw down there and hold it. This little set screw here goes in there. Tighten that down and it'll stay put. So that should be good to go. I would recommend just buying the right shaft with the 3/4 13/16 spline on it, but like I said, the place that had them or sold them they were out of stock on them. So, but they probably have them in stock by now because I bought all this stuff maybe a month or so ago. I thought I'd get onto it sooner, but I didn't. So I'm stuck with what I got, but it should work. So here's a look at the mess I got so far. Got this done. I welded some beads up it to get this pipe to fit tight on it because that's just a hair smaller. But after, somebody mowing out there, I got this done, welded that spline collar on there, which was the other side of this piece, which we turned down the lathe so it would slide in there. That piece is done, and the only problem I have is once you stick this on here, it's all the way down there, and then you slid this on down over the end here using the original link. That was poking out the end that far where I drew that line. So my fix was to weld a piece of header tube on there, which is the exact same size as this. Slide it over it where that's even on the end, and then cut that off down there where I have it marked at. You can barely see now, but that's where it needs to be, the end of it. We're getting further in my clusterfuck mess due to this shaft being a Toyota shaft instead of the GM 3/4 36 spline. It was a 36 spline, but it's metric. Anyways, this needs to cool down. It's hot. Grind that down a little bit. And then this will slide over that perfectly. We'll have to cut a notch in it so it squeezes down. And that clamp squeezes down on it. Other than that, the only other thing I might have to do, which I haven't decided if I want to do yet, is this is probably going to stick out just a hair more. Just because, which it probably won't bother much. But time I get that down there, it's going to be sticking out that much more than the original one did. It probably ain't such a big deal, but Haven't decided what I want to do there yet. Still need to put that set screw in there, but I think it's going to be too long. I haven't tried it yet. It might poke out too far, I don't know. Worst comes to worst, we'll have to grind that down. The end of it. Hope not. Ain't got that far yet. Alright guys, after a lot of grinding, welding and cussing, I got it basically in there with the tube on it. All the way up, middle, down. Got the bracket in there, the orbital motor. Of course, all this needs to be adjusted. I'm going to have to take all this back out. There's supposed to be a bracket that goes around here that this place that supplied this bracket supposedly had, but they didn't have any of them. And don't really think I need to buy something. Go around there, I can make that pretty easy. All this is pretty much adjusted how it should be. Needs to be tightened down a little bit better, but at least the steering wheel should fit on now. Only thing, like I said, I was worried about is that, get out of the sun here, that's sticking up a little higher than it should, which there's still a cap that goes on there, but I think it'll be alright. I hope. Wanted to paint that bracket also. Paint it black. Still need to get the right bolts and nuts in there too. So I believe I finally got this all figured out. I had to reinforce the bracket, weld some double D steering shaft in there to stiffen it up, and I welded this 3.5 inch exhaust clamp to the bracket to pull the orbital motor down against it to kind of give this a little more support. Of course, that's the 3.5 inch muffler clamp. I painted some of this stuff recently. The steering column cover covers this shaft. And I also welded a couple beads on it right there, so this would go down and stop against it. And then it comes out perfect. So I'm going to let all this stuff dry. I have to bolt all this stuff back into there, but the orbital motor, we should be able to install it for good, hopefully. One reason why I welded these in here is those pins, you can keep pushing against it and start squeezing it up, so I figured that would kind of help it. Maybe it'll work loose over time or something from wearing in the pivots, but who knows. I think that's a better idea. But probably what'll happen is I'll bolt all this back together, stick it in, and it won't be like it was when I pulled it out before I painted it. Well, it seems like that happens when you're doing something. Here's the finished product. I got it all bolted back together. Let's see what that clamp does. It pulls the orbital motor down against that round part there. Like I said, that place that made this bracket had some kind of bracket that went around there and bolted on, but they didn't have it in stock, and I think it was overpriced anyways. That clamp cost me like $5, and their bracket was like 20 or 30 bucks. Anyways, it's all painted, bolted on. Need to set it down in the tractor. Looks like I got some stuff sticking to the paint, but probably gonna get scratched up in the tractor anyways. That's what the end turned out like. Should be good to go. You can see that's hitting the weld right there. All I need to do, put that clamp around there, put the cover on it to cover up the slot in the dash, and it should be permanently mounted in there. Well, this is ready to drop down in there. It should slide right between the dash there, where the gauges go. Oh, I gotta screw that deal back in. That pin's sticking out there. Put a little anti-seize on it, which might be a mistake, but it's gonna get it anyways. So I'll just take this, slide it down in there, get that side on the pin there, and I had to push on this Get that to sit where it should be, which is locked on one of the pins. I just need to screw this over. You can see it, my hand's in the way. Got that bolt tightened down there. I still need to stick those jam nuts on, but it seemed a lot better since I welded these supports in there, because before you could screw that in, that bracket would start squeezing. Now it feels way more solid than it did. But all the way forward, middle, down. Like I said, I need to install this clamp on there. If I believe right, or if I remember right, it goes on like that. And this thing goes on there, but it goes that way. And I still need to install that cap over the end. So I'm going to have to take a break. It's freaking hot out here. I'm sitting in the sun. It's like damn near 100 degrees and the heat index is like 114, and I'm starting to sweat like mad. So I'm going to go cool down for a minute. Got those big nuts on the end to hold those pins still, so when you tilt it they don't move. I also got this clamp on there, and I got it adjusted right so that this piece here is down on, sits on there. You take the dash with all the gauges, set it down on there. This adjusts about right where it needs to be. I installed a couple screws to hold the dash where it needs to be. And I can tilt this up. It's all the way up, middle, down. And that seems to be working beautifully. Perfect. Now, just need to kind of get this stuff on there for good. Bolt that back on, a couple nuts to hold it on. And after all this is finished, I need to get my hoses. I ordered some fittings and some hoses. Run them straight down into there where the lines are. We used to be in business. I do need to put that back on and put the steering wheel back on, but that's not such a big deal. The hard stuff's done, except for the hoses. That might be a little bit of a pain in the butt. We'll figure that out when we get there. I ordered some yesterday, and they just shipped out today, but I also have to change this hose down here to hook up to the line there. And also change the fitting there. Because these fittings here, pipe thread, that's automotive style, and it's different than JIC, like hydraulic hoses and stuff. And that's the problem you run into on these, that saginaw box on it. It's got all automotive fittings and pipe ends on them, or whatever you want to call them. And it starts to make a hassle out of doing anything. Dash panel screwed back down where it needs to be. Just need to install the steering wheel. Slides right down in there. And this piece goes on. Never find the square part of it. And that little washer was there. And that nut was on there. That's the telescoping part. Tighten that down and she stays there. Push it back down. Lock her down. I think it does stick up just a hair higher right there than it did before, but don't really want to cut that shaft and for a quarter of an inch or whatever it is, but she's good to go. At least this part of it. All the way up, middle, down. Hopefully it'll steer better than it did. So here's the place I ordered that orbital valve from. And I ordered this one right here. 6.1 cubic inch, I believe that stands for, but we got a 488, 7.6, 9.8, 12.2. We got quite a few different ones. 6.1 hydraulic orbital steering valve open center non-load is what I ordered. I ordered a kit, it came with that bracket. I think it's up here somewhere. Might be under steering packages. Yeah, right there's this kit here is what I ordered. You can pick what length of column, came with that bracket. But they do not have the 3/4 36 spline that you actually need it, but it makes it easier to use. If you don't have a lathe, and you gotta buy a bunch of other parts. But so that's the place I got it from. They're pretty reasonably priced. Started installing the hoses. I'll run down 2 lines for your pressure, which is this line here. I have this one is left, that one is right, and that is the return to the tank, which is obvious because it's a larger line. These 2 here might be the only ones I might have crossed, but they have this on the right side of the column down the left, so that's the way I hooked it right to left. Anyways, there's 4 hoses. 3 of them are, where's it at? 3/8 JIC on both ends. And the larger one for the return is the 3/4, or no, excuse me, 1/2 inch 8 JIC hose. The only thing you have to do is buy you some fittings like these. Go from 6 to 6 and 8 to 8, because this end's JIC and the factory end is JIC. You got to put the adapter in there, and you can see them right there, there, and there. With those hooked up good, the only problem I might have, need to figure out some way to hold these lines still. When you tilt the column, they kind of want to move up and down. Not sure what to do there yet. But I have this bracket. This is the original bracket that held the line still, but these are up higher, being the lines that we're using are down below here. So I don't know if I can adapt that, work in there somehow or not. It's kind of messing with my wires here. Might have to route them a little different. Maybe I can just leave them in the middle between all the hoses. There is a round, this shaft back here that's on the back of the tank, so I shouldn't have to worry about that cutting the hoses. Although I might stick some of that plastic stuff around them to keep it from rubbing there. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. Came with fittings to screw in there. I did have to buy one that went, because these are 6 3/4 16 thread stay fittings that went to JIC. I had to buy one that went from 3/4 16 to 8 to get the return hose to work. So once I get all these hooked up and figure out how to kind of hold them there, we can test it. I still need to hook this line to here. I don't know if I said this before, but this is an automotive fitting on this side, and so is this, the opposite end that went into here. I already got the fittings to fix that problem, but I have a fitting. I'm going to have to braze on there, or weld on there, probably braze it on, drill a hole in it, braze it on. That's the pressure line that runs into the rear housing where the pump is. And this is leaking oil. Put that back up there. Which I came out here The other day I noticed there's a wet spot on the ground. The oil was trying to run out. I suppose it's siphoning it out of the tank here. We need to get that fixed. And hopefully we'll be in business so we can steer the damn thing. Although we could steer it before, but it wasn't very safe. Got all the hoses hooked up. I stick some tape around that and angle it back that way. And I stuck the floor plate on so I could kind of get this line where it needs to be. I got that. Back in there, brazed the nut on there. Not a nut, but a fitting on there. So it would match up with the hose there. Actual 6 JIC. Got that line routed around there. Somewhat kind of figured out a deal to hold these lines. That's the original line holder that went in here. It held the lines that went up this way. So I just got it shoved back in there to kind of hold them because we're going to test it here. That one there doesn't seem to want to. It probably should be there, I think, but that one won't fit over to here. There's a spot for that line, a spot for that line. So I'm just going to hook these 3 into it. I haven't figured out what I want to make it here to hold it, but that line is kind of held by that, so it shouldn't move too much. Got the top all hooked up. I did take off this line here. That's the right side, and spun the steering wheel, and it did shoot oil out of there, so that should be the right side going to the line I originally hooked it to. I got a rag there so that doesn't ground out the starter switch. Need to start it up and see what it does. Hopefully we don't have a bunch of leaks. I don't think we will. At least I hope we won't. Get up here on this thing. I'll get up here on this. Go to start it. And the battery terminal probably won't connect, but we'll find out here. See what she does. See if it turns. Trying to anyway. Left. I got some air in it. There's it starting to work. Getting the air worked out of it. Don't see anything majorly leaking. Nothing down there. Nothing shooting out of here. I think I need to get some tie rod. That is a little loose. exhaust, whatever you want to call it. Nothing obviously leaking. Still ain't want to turn like it should. Check the oil up. Out. It's been sitting down here for, God, I don't know, years, 30 years, 35 years, maybe 40 years. It's been there for a while. My dad's car. I remember I was a little kid, not real little, but we used to sit up more up there, and we built that little shack there, and Brought it down here, it's been sitting since.